going on, Buckeye Nation? OH? Give me that IO back down in the comments. I hope you said it out loud as well. I'm Matt Goldman. You're watching the Ohio State Football Report presented by Chat Sports. Ohio State's 2024 season kicks off on August 31st. The Akron Zips visit Ohio Stadium. We'll talk about that on today's show. As well, the latest news surrounding what's going on in Columbus and Ryan Day's team. So Ohio State, August 31st, it's going to be an afternoon game. They take on Akron. Joe Morehead, he's going to come to Columbus as the head coach for Akron. But Ohio State is a heavy favorite. 51 points according to Vegas with a 59-point total. That's a lot for Ohio State, especially their first game of the season. I'm not sure if it's going to get there, especially the spread, maybe the total points. But we're going to talk more about Ohio State. But first, I want to tell you a little about who I am. I graduated in May of 2024 from The Ohio State University. Yes, I did say the. We do have the right to say that. I was a broadcaster for Scarlet Gray Sports Radio and at Big Ten Network Plus, so I have a lot of experience, but I also grew up a major Ohio State fan, third-generation Buckeye. You see that on your screen. Shout out my grandparents, my mom and dad, and now my brother who's a sophomore there, Jared, just started classes today. Buckeye blood runs strong. I bleed scarlet and gray. So college football is back. Like this video if you are hyped as college football starts this week. It's from Ireland, but Ohio State is just less than 2 weeks away from their football returning to the Horseshoe. I'm excited for that one as Ohio State looks to get some vengeance back, starting with Akron. Well, how do they do that? That's going to be really tough because they have a lot new pieces, especially quarterback Will Howard. But they have to face Joe Morehead, as I talked about earlier, the head coach for Akron. Last time he was in Ohio Stadium, it did not go well for Ohio State. Did not go well for me. It was my first game as a student. Ohio State was playing Oregon. C.J. Stroud's first game as well. One offensive player of the year in the NFL, so not too bad of a player. But Joe Morehead, he was the offensive coordinator for the Oregon Ducks. Ohio State lost 35-28, a heartbreaker, a big loss in 2021 to open the season. So that was the end of Ohio State's time in that 2021 year. Now let's shift to 2024. Will Howard, who transferred from Kansas State. Ohio State, plenty of options in the transfer portal for quarterbacks, but they chose Will Howard, who has Big 12 championship game experience. So he's a Power 5 quarterback. So Ohio State has a guy who has been around a Power 5 system, which is very big. But they could have had other guys as well. Dylan Gabriel, who went to Oregon, who sought out to be the best quarterback in the Big 10. Or it could have been Cam Ward, who the University of Miami gave a bag to in terms of NIL money. Ohio State could have offered that, especially because they had a lot of NIL money around. But they went with Will Howard. And looking at the depth chart for Ohio State, Will Howard, who was announced on August 15th as the starting quarterback, Ryan Day, the head coach of Ohio State, said that Howard stood out and that Devin Brown, Julian Sayin were far behind Howard. Howard's stats in 2023 were exceptional for what he did in the Big 12. However, he's a really good runner, so we don't even get to see that part. Very accurate, 61% pass completion percentage. The touchdowns are pretty solid, 24. And then the interceptions, not great for a Big 12 offense, but, with Ohio State and Ryan Day and Chip Kelly, who will now be calling the plays for Ohio State, this is big for Will Howard's development, but he also has a ton of weapons, which he didn't have at Kansas State. TreVeyon Henderson, Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss, the two-headed monster. Judkins was the 2023 SEC Freshman of the Year. And then Emeka Egbuka, we all know about Emeka Egbuka last year. Really did not do the same production he had in 2022 because a midseason foot surgery he had. Carnell Tate, the sophomore, is looking to take a bigger step this year, especially with Marvin Harrison Jr. leaving. And then Jeremiah Smith. We're going to talk about more Smith later on in the show, but Jeremiah Smith, a freak athlete. I just talked about the two-headed monster, the two running backs, Henderson and Judkins, the carry numbers, the yards numbers. There are really good backs together. Combined 26 touchdowns between these two last year. I think in terms of what Chip Kelly has done as an offensive coordinator and a play caller, this is the perfect 1-2 punch you need. Henderson has been taking more snaps with the first team than Judkins, but I think these two go hand in hand, and I'm really excited to watch both of them because of the skill set they bring. So now Emeka Egbuka, who I just talked about with the foot surgery, you can see the stats are obviously very altered in 2023 compared to his sophomore campaign in 2022. If you want the sophomore year Emeka Egbuka to return, this is the year to have him be that guy, be the number 2 that Ohio State really could rely on in terms of just that overall best player on offense for Ohio State. 74 receptions in 2022, over 1,000 yards for Ohio State through the air. Marvin Harrison Jr. was on the team. So much talent was on that Ohio State roster. And I think with Emeka and the potential he has, the sky is the limit for him, and he's also the veteran presence Ohio State needs to have in that wide receiver room. Brian Hartline has done a great job developing wide receivers into a first-round talent. I think this is the year he takes a bigger step. Now, the bigger question is, TreVeyon Henderson or Emeka Egbuka? Who's going to have the better season after both players had big injuries last year that sidelined them and really altered their stats? I want you to type down in the comments 32 for Henderson or 2 for Emeka Egbuka. And another weapon that Will Howard will have the chance to throw to this year, it's Jeremiah Smith, the number 1 overall player in the 2024 24/7 Sports recruiting class. Those high school numbers are insane in 2023. 90 receptions, almost 1,400 yards, almost 20 touchdowns, just one away. That's unheard of. And earlier in the winter, as a 17-year-old who he enrolled early for Ohio State's off-season program, he was named the first ever freshman to be an Iron Buckeye. Now, what is an Iron Buckeye, you might ask? An Iron Buckeye is a top 10 performer throughout the winter workouts and off-season programs. He was named that out of the 90 guys in the program in the top 10 as a freshman, as a 17-year-old. That's insane to think about. Is he the next Marvin Harrison Jr.? Maybe. I remember when Garrett Wilson was talking about Jackson Smith and Jigba saying, that guy's the next guy here at Ohio State. And then Jackson says, Marvin's the next guy. Marvin's talked about Jeremiah Smith saying, I've never seen anything like this from that guy of a young age. That's pretty incredible to think about. And we're excited to watch this upcoming year what Jeremiah Smith can do for Ohio State. Now, transitioning to defense, the guys that returned that will be on the front lines for the defense. Ty Hamilton, he had a pretty solid year. Not that big of a name compared to the other 3 you're seeing on the screen. JTT is what we're going to call him. The 24/7 Sports class of 2021's overall number 1 player. He has not developed into the guy we need him to be, but Jack Sawyer is starting to transition that way. You see him as well. 45 tackles. The tackles for loss is what really sticks out for me about Jack Sawyer, and the sacks as well, because his numbers really got to what we need from Jack Sawyer. Tyleik Williams, a guy in the trenches that could have gone to be a second-round pick in the NFL draft this year, decide to return. Him and Michael Hall Jr., who were the defensive tackles last year, they were inseparable. Like, they were insane last year. But I think Ohio State, who has not had that perennial defensive end, someone needs to be that guy. The last time we've had that guy was Chase Young. That was a little while ago. I was in high school. Jack Sawyer, he needs to be the next Nick or Joey Bosa in terms of production and that dominant here at Ohio State. Make sure you're subscribed, as this is the best Ohio State content out there. Let's beat my boss, James Yoder. Let's be better than the Michigan Football Report. The school up north, that's what we're going to call them. We don't call them by their names. Yeah, they won a championship. That's great. Soft championship, asterisk. This is the real year. This is the real test. No cheating, no Connor Stallions. But let's talk about Ohio State, the rest of their defense. A top 5 defense last year, the 2023 stats of some of the guys in the DB room. Denzel Burke, an All-American cornerback his freshman year, was insane. That guy stood out like a sore thumb on this defense. But last year, he was pretty solid. The PBUs ranked number 1 in the Big Ten. You see them right there. David Igbenosum transferred in from Ole Miss. I called his games in high school. By the way, this guy was a freak athlete in high school. He's even a better athlete in person at Ohio State in the college level. He's one of the best cornerbacks in terms of the run game on defense. Jordan Hancock, very solid, came from Clemson a few years ago. He really stepped up and was that cornerback number 3 that Ohio State needed. And then Lathan Ransom, a returning Buckeye, number 8, one of the captains. Lathan is a great player, but he's been bogged up by injuries in the past. Let's see what happens with Lathan this upcoming future. Now, shifting to Akron, the opponent, the Zips. They have a battle going on at their practice facility. It's either Taj Bullock or Ben Finley, the Cal transfer. Who's going to be the quarterback 1? Well, looking at their stats from the past year, they're not that great. No one's really had insane production when you really think about it. Finley threw for 572 yards. Not a lot of opportunities. The rush yards for Finley, 8 yards. That's nothing. Taj Bullock, I think, is overall a better quarterback because he's more dual threat, and he fits what Akron is looking for in terms of trying to exploit Ohio State, especially the linebackers. That's going to be the biggest question for Ohio State's defense. Also, I didn't even talk about the linebackers today. That will be future episodes down the line. But for Akron, last year, their offense, no bueno. They were ranked 130th out of 133 FBS teams in terms of scoring, and then their total offense was right there at the 129th mark. I mean, that is not good for any football program, and that's a big sign for Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator for Ohio State, to be like, okay, we can take these guys. This shouldn't be that hard. That's going to be a big thing for Ohio State to get going in their opening game and build confidence for these guys. But I'm curious for you guys, the score. I talked about earlier the spread predicted for me, Ohio State versus Akron. I think it's going to be a blowout and Ohio State's going to win. I believe they're going to win 48-10, but I am curious what you guys have to say in the comments because this is Ohio State's opening game. It's a big performance for the national audience to see and what this national championship favorite team is going to look like throughout the year. I know this opponent is not Oregon, Michigan, or Penn State, but this is still a legit Division I opponent. So I compiled a list of the Zips' top defensive players that are returning this year. You have defensive end C.J. Nunley, 7 sacks, big numbers, better than any Ohio State player had in the defensive line this past year. So that's something Ohio State needs to take care of, especially because that offensive line, the right side, not too good. They have 2 great linebackers, Antavius Fish and Brian McCoy. They combined for over 150 tackles together. And then they have a really good and experienced secondary. Devontae Golden Nelson, Darian Lewis. They had a lot of great experience in terms of PBUs. Lewis, all-MAC team last year. So this secondary should be pretty good. And you're seeing right there, the defense overall, not that bad in America last year. 32 in yards allowed total per game. Akron, really not that bad at that. So that's where Ohio State, especially with a new quarterback, that could be trouble for the Buckeyes. So look to see what Akron can do in this opening game because they're going to want to make a statement. They're going to want to try and put up points and exploit Ohio State for future opponents. And I think this is going to be a big test for both sides of the ball. Did you enjoy this video? I really hope you did because I know Ohio State content is something I love talking about. I hope you guys love listening to. So hit that like button for me because I really would appreciate it and it does help the channel grow. Please follow me on X or Twitter, however you want to say, at Matt Goldman 28. More Ohio State content coming your way. I'm going to talk about on Twitter. If you want to shoot me a DM, ask me any questions, got any comments about the Buckeyes, happy to talk ball all day with you, and we'll see you soon. Go Bucks.